Hallelujah, hallelujah. Blessed be the creator of heaven and earth, Yehudah Zavaot. We give glory to his high and holy name forever. Thanking him for our lives, food, clothing, and shelter, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Thanking the creator for all things and everything. We're here once again, going over another Tanakh review. This time it will be Haftarah Terumah. Just going over the different articles that are located in the Tabernacle and the Holy and in the Holy of Holies, and just the whole setup of the Tabernacle. We'll I'm sure that Nasik will review that, and the Haftarah portion also will be which is the main purpose of this, is what he'll be reviewing. But like he does every week, he reviews the actual the Sidra of the Parashah, and gives us some insight on things that some teachers might have not touched on. So it's basically a review for all of you that are new, just to gain understanding and to have edification. I give due respect to my brother, Chief Prince Ariel Ben Yissaschar, the leader of the congregation where I teach at, even Congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Also, my name is Uziel Lewy. I'm one of the teachers there, and I pray that the Most High God will continue to be with us and bless us and protect us. Praying for the life of all those who are downtrodden and destitute, the poor and the needy, and I pray that the Most High God will continue to be with us. And I say an early Shabbat Shalom to everyone out there, and I pray that the creator of heaven and earth will be with you all. At this time, I will introduce to you the person who will be going over the Haftarah Terumah, none other than Nasik Zurishaddai Ben Yehudah, which is one of my teachers and my mentor. How are you, Nasik?
Great. Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Due respects to the platform on D.C.B channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Ariel Ben Yissaschar, the host, Chief Uziel, to the princes and chiefs, Kohanim, the rabbis, Maureen, brothers and sisters, visitors, I greet you all in the time of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and other Shabbat Shalom. And I'd like to continue to say, Adonai Septai Di Taku Viyagi, Tila Theaka, O Lord, down my lips and my mouth should declare thy praise. And I'd like to first start off making a correction on one of my own statements a while back. When it came with in dealing with the Sidra Yithro, and I give credit to my good friend, sister, Ima Olive, who always fact check what I say. I wish you do check it out. And I made mention about two Sidros with names. And I mentioned Kai Sarah, and I mentioned Yithro being the second. But I don't, for the life of me, I don't, coming from BINAH Zakim, I don't know how I will omit Noah, which is the second Sidra in the scriptures. So when Ima Olive told me about it, I said, wow, I had to think back. I never really looked back. I said, you're right. And I said, nah. She said, well, everybody make mistakes. I said, yes, but I'm from BINAH Zakim. Genesis is what we do. I said, how I forget the second Sidra in the book? That's named after Noah. But nevertheless, I'm here to, I'm thankful that she did point that out to me. And unfortunately, I found it out after I did the last talk. So I'm giving her credit, and I like to make the official correction in that particular area there. So the first Sidra to have an individual name was Noah. Then you had Kai Sarah. Then you had Jethro. So in that particular order. So I apologize for that mistake. I hope I didn't, but I hope other people is fact checking on me on a lot of things I say too, because I usually say any mistake than my own. So I don't want you just to take everything I say at face value. I like for you to, go over and discuss it with your teachers, or look at it and fact check yourself. And any comments or anything, any mistakes I made, even though it be my own, as other people might need to learn, from the correction if it's out there, and somebody bring it to me. And I appreciate that. So now, and also I didn't address this other sister question because I forgot it, about why do a baby say Dada instead of Abba first. I don't know. That one I could say right quick. I don't know. Only because so it'd be easier for them with the tongue being up at the roof of the mouth. That's about it. And it's like tough. I really don't know. So you have to ask somebody that's in that particular field. Now in the Sidra, last Sidra, we left with Mishpatim, and I left some questions out there. And one of the things I said I told a couple of people I spoke to early in the week was that I would make some scenarios a little bit more difficult in the way you analyze, because one of the issues was if you find a thief breaking in and at night, and if the sun be risen upon him. So, that blood, if you slay him, blood guiltiness be for him because he's not worthy of death at that particular time for some reason. Now, it's a lot of viewpoints on what it means when the sun be risen upon him. Now, at night, it's another area of concern. And I like to bring this to a scenario here for people to discuss later on. What is it a father breaking into his son's house at night? Did the son kill his father? Or do he spare him when he's caught breaking in at night? And then role reversal. What if it is the son breaking into his father's house? Did the father kill the son? Because he caught him at night. Because he's breaking in at night. So there's a lot of different scenarios in scriptures. And another one I like to just throw out there for to reflect upon is an ox. If you guard a human being, but it's the first time he guard a human being, and he slays him, is the owner acquitted or not acquitted? Do you use the scenery, whether did he take enough precautions to have a strong enough fence to put the ox in the first place? Or was the fence flimsy where the ox got out? Since he hadn't been warned at any time, and this is the first occurrence. So I bring those different scenarios out because though we might breeze through different congregations over certain scenarios and read the Peshat, which is the plain reading of the particular scripture, and sometimes we might give a plain meaning, there's a lot of complex situations in Mishpatim. So everything is not just cut and dry. That's why every case that you deal with must be dealt with as an individual case, simply because it's a different time. Even if it's the same individual, it's a different time. So a whole new occurrence takes place. Now, to deal with this, you say, okay, when I left off with Mishpatim, before we had the divine revelation at Mount Sinai. So now when we had the divine revelation at Mount Sinai in Mishpatim, Jethro, excuse me. Why is it that in Mishpatim, they start off with civil laws, and only after Mishpatim, we coming into about how to build a sanctuary? So that's something to consider, that on the highest revelation, it ends off in Jethro about a building of an altar. And then it goes into civil laws. And now after we come from civil laws, then we come straight into an area of building a sanctuary. So that's just something I don't want to throw out because I'm not going to spend that much time, but it's a couple elements in here I like to just bring out, going through it. In the 25th chapter, for those that want to follow on in the future, the 25th chapter of Exodus to the 27th chapter, the 19th verse, that covers Terumah. Now, the word Terumah itself, I heard Chief Wu speaking on it yesterday, but it does mean offerings, and it also means donations. All right, so, but the thing about Terumah is usually grain offerings. In this case here, it don't speak anything about grain. So that's one of the things I like to just focus on, in the sense of when people say, it don't mean an offering. Yeah, it means an offering or a donation, but usually in most parts of the scripture, when they talk about Terumah, is dealing with wheat, spelt, oat, barley, stuff like that. Is grain. But here, the term used in the sense of a donation. All right, so now in the opening, I just want to read just a couple of opening words in it. And it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they take from me an offering. Every man whose heart maketh him willing, you shall take my offering. All right, now I just want to stop there for just a minute and speak on that. First of all, the Creator didn't ask to give. He didn't ask for the people to give him anything. That's number one. Number two, the command is not for the people to give. The command is for the individuals that's collecting to collect and take. So it's a big difference now. Here in this particular portion, with these, in Terumah, and you figure the first fundraising, the first construction project for the nation. Before we talk about building our own houses, the first construction project gonna be about the Mishkan, and yet the Creator gives a law to Prophet Moses while he on the mount, and the law is concerning the ones who supposed to go ahead and collect, not the ones who's giving. Ain't that something? So that's some things to consider in the word Terumah, because as we read, the command is for those that's going to take it. And then why would you tell those people to take it? And then before we get to it, you got to ask that question. Why the command for those to take it? If somebody going to give something, naturally, and you know it's for a project, naturally, you should take it. But sometimes people say, I don't want that from you. Or that's too little. Or because it's you, I don't want that. Where we get a glimmer of something similar to that, and the Sidra of Korach, when he rebelled against Moshe, Moses said, told the Creator, don't even accept their offering, their little part, small as it was, don't even accept it. So hence the command is based on these guys that are actually going to get it and do the collection. And then it says, from every man whose heart maketh him willing. So that means right then and there that whatever you're going to give, whatever you decide to give, it reflects your heart, what you think about the project and the Creator. So that means right then and there that when the people that take it, you're only taking what they consider in their heart, what this project undertaking is worth. Now, I'm just going to be just a few more verses, and I'm going to be brief in this particular portion here. And it goes on to say, and this is the offering which ye shall take of them, gold and silver, brass and blue, purple and scarlet, and fine linen, goat's hair, and ram skin, dyed red, and seal skin, and acacia wood. Before I go past the sixth verse, seal skins, the word takash, there's always a controversy about takash and what it is. We know it's a particular skin. We know it's skin, that's number one. And we know it's a unique creature, whatever that was. Most people say it's seal skin. One, pretty much where you're gonna find it in the desert anyway, but that's besides the point that I don't want to make now. But the animal itself, the skin, when we and no one really knows what that animal, that creature is. No one really knows, and to this day, it's always a big debate. What was the animal? All right. And I just want to caution, because since we find seal skin a lot in the book, and it says a seal is a mammal, a whale is a mammal. As far as we're concerned, the way the scriptures categorize animals and creatures is what we deal with. So whether it's part of aquatic life, form and swarms or whatever it is, then that's how the scriptures describe it. That's what we describe it as in the book. All right. So, when they consider canines and all that kind of stuff, they section it off. Modern people tend to subsection things off. But we got to go by what scriptures say. As they categorize what swarms around the waters and stuff like that, what crawls, what creeps, what flies. Those categories that we must deal with when it's referring to in the book. Another area is that as many creatures that live and gone, we don't know. But from the size of it, as which I'm not going to get into too much in this particular talk, but I just want to speak on it, that it had to be an animal that had colors in its skin, in its fur, and in the actual skin. So, and not only, and there's certain words that's used there in actually Sasson, which is like a Hebrew, well, they're using Hebrew, but it's actually Aramaic in that sense. But there's an animal, they say it's an animal that lived only during that particular time. And it had to be large enough because it wasn't skin crocheted or sewed together. It's one piece. And the one piece covered a certain section of the roof. Because we didn't have a ceiling roof at the Mishkan. But let me just, I just want to bring that point out about the Takash. That they just, most other people would say it's an animal that existed only at that particular time. It had to be a large enough animal. Now, if it's a sea creature, we know some sea creatures be pretty large too, in ratio to the Mishkan, the Tabernacle. But we don't know what it was, but it had to be something there. All right, and let me just finish reading some more items here. In the 6th verse, it says, oil for the lamp, spices for the anointing oil, and sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set for the ephod, for the breastplate. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I showed thee, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the furniture thereof, even so shall you make it. All right, one of the issues it goes into is that it mentions the items. When we check the items out, you basically got 13 items, not counting the that goes into what makes the tabernacle function as within the tabernacle. But when you get to the stones and the stuff like that, the 2 extra items there, stone for the breastplate, and then the onyx stone itself, which is another slab. Those items there, that makes it 15. But basically, the parts that actually goes into the tabernacle, the Mishkan itself, it actually is 13 items that's enumerated there. But what is questionable, is that when they talk about acacia wood, that's another issue I like to bring out. All right. Some books might say pine wood. Some might say, shittim wood. In the book I'm reading right now, it says acacia wood. Some, cedar. It's actually cedar. And now, where would you find cedar at that area? That's one thing to consider and think about. And the beginning of the thing of the sidra, the Creator tells the individual to take from them. So how can I take something that you don't have? if I say, give me something, then if you don't have it, you might go and get it. That's what I want from you. Go and get it. But if it says take from you, that means it's pretty much would say you have it right there. You don't have to go anywhere to get it. Now, the size, I know many people that went over the Sidra noticed the size of the boards, that would be used. And the size of the boards, was very, very tall. So when we left Egypt in haste, but we got jewels of gold, jewels of silver, and raiment, and anything else we might have wanted. But who stops when we only took the dough that was on our backs because we didn't have time to knead it? Where would we get the wood? And we had to get, it's not the wood that you get and say, okay, this wood a little short, let's tack it on to the next size to make it long enough. Let's tack it on to the next size to make it long enough. These boards had to be one piece board that you cut out. When you cut it to run it through, run the wood through, it had to be that size. Now you could say, you could have traded it off with other nations, but then how much wood you gonna get if you're trading? Who's gonna stop the trade for wood at that particular time? Because the command came while Moses was on the mountain. Not, after the giving of the Torah, Moses on the mountain during this 40 days before the sin of the golden calf. And this command, the Creator is telling him that while he's up in the mountain. So there's a lot of comments on it, but being the word says take from them, that means they had it already. That's would be my viewpoint, as well as many other commentaries' viewpoint on it. And also, they say, well, they brought the wood with them out of Egypt. Why? That's another story. You could discuss it. As a Midrash tells it, that says Jacob took some trees out the land on his way to Egypt and planted them in Egypt, because cedars don't usually grow in Egypt. That's not where it really grow at. And it was supposed to be a tradition that he takes when the children of Israel were going to leave, just like Joseph said, God going to visit them, bring them out. Jacob knew the same story, that God going to visit his people and bring them out, that they take those trees with them. And it's always a reminder that this is where you're from, not where you belong. Because you got some foreign element from one particular geographical location that don't grow in this particular location under natural circumstances. So that's just some food for thought. But like I said, people can always discuss it further. But I'm basing it on not that you have to go find, not that you have to go trade, but that you left with these items amongst your stuff. And that's one element that I like to bring out in reference to that. All right. Also, that's still one of the most precious items in there. And they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2 cubits and a half should be the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold within and without. Thou shalt thou overlay it, and shall make upon it a crown of gold round about. So we know the Ark of the Covenant will supposed to be made there, and it's supposed to be a pure gold. All right, inlaid and outlaid. So I'm not going to go through the whole details in this here right now, because I'm sure this is going to come up in again more so several times in the book of Exodus. One section of Sidra that deals with it more extensively is Wayakel and Pakudei. So I like to bring out this particular idea, is that I like to speak more about the Ark and about the Mishkan and as why did the Creator need us to build something that he could dwell within us, but not in it. So what's the purpose of building it? That's number one. All right. number two, you like to say, well, okay, for the creations of the heavens and the earth, we got one chapter, just one chapter. But for the the making of the Mishkan, from Exodus the 25th chapter to the 40th, it's 15 chapters. You got 13 chapters dedicated to that. 13 dedicated to the making of the Mishkan, and it's in details. Also, let's look at it's the creative one that say not dwell in it, but to dwell amongst us, dwell within us. And one, why would it take so much for him to explain and elaborate on that as opposed to the creation story? You figure dealing with the creation, you should explain that a little bit more. We have a lot of questions concerning that. Well, one, we wasn't partakers in the creation, but we're going to be partakers in this here, making a space for the Creator. And since we're going to be partakers and we're going to participate in making a space for the Creator gave us a blueprint that was in Moshe's head. And that's something. He didn't ever give us a blueprint for the heavens and earth, but he gave a blueprint and directions how to build space for him. And it said just for him to dwell amongst us. So now when we say 13 articles, I mentioned 13 articles before, wow, you say, well, okay, this is because the relationship that the Creator will have towards us as a people, a sign with love. The word love in Hebrew is ahava. But the gematria, or each letter that's within that word is 13. And another word has 13 when you sum up the letters, which is echad, one, number one. God want to show his love for us so we could be one with him. So therefore, we have this great undertaking, our great adventure of a construction work. We are creating a space for the Creator. That's all we can do, is create a space for him. So that's just some of the things I like to highlight on there about the ark. And one of the things about the ark is that when it says, how does these things reflect human character? And when we look at the human character, the ark is first made of wood. And then it's made of gold. Then it's made with gold again. But the lid is solid gold. So that means that you make the ark of wood, but then you got to make a case to go around the wood of solid gold. And then you got to make an interior of solid gold, and then put that inside where it matches flush with the outer and cover the inner. So if we take some kind of symbolism behind that, the most precious item, and within the ark is the covenant of the Creator. And over the ark is a cover of solid gold with two cherubim that's facing one another, the wings outstretched over the ark, over it. That's like people when we're talking about the ark, not the cherubim per se, not the cover, just the actual box itself. We are what we actually are. The wood is what we actually are. That's the wood. What we actually are, that we try to protect and hide. What we like to show to the world is that bling, the outward. That's the outward part of the gold. But what's truly inside us, that real divine spark and essence that's divine, is within. So even in building the ark of the covenant, is drawn from within yourself, bypassing what would be your normal desire and be the true image that you project on the outside. That's what the ark will reflect, being inlaid and overlaid with gold as character, essence, spiritual. So I just want, and I could go a little bit more on it, but just for the sake of time, and I'll move on from there. But and this, we talk about other articles in there, such as the table, all right, which all these things I'll touch on later on in another portion of the Sidra. But the table itself, that's inside there, and it's on the north side of the tabernacle as you enter. Then you have the menorah, and the menorah, we don't know what is the height of the menorah. All we know is the design to a degree and its purpose outwardly. So we know part of its design. We know it had 7 branches. And the 7 branches could reflect the 7 different character traits that most times those that follow tradition and study about, Sod, Malkut, Gevora, Teferet, those different terminology that of character trait building that we use during the time, counting from the day after Pesach, the weeks, the 7 weeks leading up to Shavuot. We work on different characters and virtues to try to get better before we get to the time of Shavuot. It reflects that. But you got a menorah inside a place, and you think it would be by the door as you come in, but it's not there. The menorah is way on the interior, and the priest mostly had to light it up at the time. That is really not doing him much good at all. He had on the table, you had bread that was put there from week to week, 12 loaves representing these 12 tribes. You had also, and you had also on there, you had not only the bread, you had the altar incense, the golden altar. That you burn incense there twice a day. Once when you start off and once in the evening. All that is a mystery. And one of the greatest mysteries is that when you read it in the Hebrew and you look at it very carefully about the ark being in the Holy of Holies, that when it was put there, it gives you the dimension of the ark. We know the dimensions of the Holy of Holy area. And we know there's a screen, a curtain there. And it said it took up no space. How does something go in a spot that has size, take up no space? That is a miracle within itself. So whatever's going on in there, and that Holy of Holies that the Kohen only allowed to go in once a year, is a whole nother world. So you got, where the Ark of the Covenant went in, that was the holiest area. Right outside there, you had the 3 articles, 3 major articles, which is the table of showbread, the golden altar, and you had the menorah. And then you had little vessels and utensils around it as well in there. Also, when we talk about these 3 metals, I mentioned 3 metals in here in the making, and that's the last time I'm speaking on reference to that before I go into this Sidra, because there's so much stuff here. But I know I'll be able to get back to it another time. It's 3 types of metals that's used here. You're talking about gold, you're talking about silver, and you're talking about copper. And so now, we know where most of the gold went. And we know where the copper was. But the silver, why would you have a foundation, anchors, little sockets of silver and have wooden boards on the side of a building? But it seems like if you're going to make a building looking really grandeur, you would say, well, I'm going to have either gold pillars, I'm going to have silver pillars, but the silver is just at the bottom to hold down. And you notice that out of all the articles that is mentioned, what I will leave off with, that's mentioned out the 13 articles, pretty much, 15 count, what actually the priest used, but 13 articles that only the silver has an amount to it. You give up much gold as your heart desire. You give up as much copper as your heart desire. You give up as much wool, linen, as your heart desire. But when it came to the silver, you only was allowed to give a half a shekel. That's something. That's all he was allowed to give. And it was 2 half shekels that I was talking about one time. One, for the men of age of war, and then also one for the sanctuary. All right, those are different 2 half shekels that's there. So now, this is a community project. And that means everybody, as we used to say, has some skin in the game. Because the rich can't give more and the poor cannot give less. So everybody on the ground level, where the sockets were, was equal and had some say so. So the Mishkan didn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone. And yet the Creator said, is a place that I could dwell amongst you, not that I'm going to dwell within the Mishkan itself. So that makes one of the strongest things about the Mishkan, except that we the only people that had a place that our Creator had told us to make strictly for Himself, and so that He could be close to us. So when we think about the altar itself, we had 2 altars, the golden altar, but main one that we see was the copper altar. And the miracle about the copper altar is that in the beginning, it didn't have that much copper around it. It was made of wood overlaid with copper. And yet the fire had to continually burn in that altar. And yet it haven't melt or burnt the wood in it. That's a miracle within itself. And I know the chief foods, when he spoke about it, it's a large altar. So imagine the meat that went up on there and the different sacrifices that went up there on a daily. So, and yet at first it was only lined halfway up with copper until later on, we read later on after the problem with Korach, Dathan, and Abiram, then we find out that the censer pans that those 250 princes that try to offer up incense before the Creator, those was beaten out and finished off the rest of the altar that was on the outside. So those are some of the things I just want to bring out right now. And dealing with the altar could be used for an acronym for a word such as you take them the mem for the altar, Mezbiah. That's the word for altar in Hebrew, Mezbiah. All right, so you got the mem. It could be Makila. Makila is actually forgiveness. Then you talk about Zakut. Zakut for the design. All right, that is representing more of merit, gaining some kind of merit. Then you got the what you call the debate, which is for baraka, which is a blessing. So you get forgiveness, earn some merit, you get a blessing, and the final one you got is itself is the hay for chaim. You can enjoy your life a lot better. So that's all I'm gonna speak on in reference to this right now. But so much stuff in here, but I don't want to go into that in depth. I will share other things. If there's any questions in reference to some of the things I brought out here, then leave it in the comments, and I'll do my best to try to address them. But I'm gonna go into the book of Kings and read 1 Kings, the 5th chapter, the Haftarah that's dealing with the building of the temple itself. And it starts from the 5th chapter of Kings and picks up at the 20, let me see where I got it written out here, the 26th verse, 5th chapter, 26th verse of Kings, and we go on to the 613th verse of Kings. All right, and that's First Kings, and we're dealing with this guy King Solomon, who was supposed to be the wisest man that ever lived. So we're just going. We know that David wanted to build a house for the Creator, but he had too much war. Too many wars on every side and blood on his, on his hands. So he created the space for Solomon to be able to do what he needed to do. All right. So if we dare, Chief, the 5th chapter of First King, all right, 21st verse.
Let me just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
Nasik. Put it in the right. There you go. Hallelujah. We're in the book of 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 26, and it reads, And Jehovah gave Solomon wisdom, and he promised him, as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. And King Solomon raised the levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home, and Adoniram was over the levy.
Okay, all right there. Okay. All right, so now what we have here is that you got Solomon himself would go through this great undertaking. All right, and did we pick it up? You picked it up at what chapter? 5th chapter, right?
Chapter 5, verse 26. Is that what?
No, 21. Okay. All right. That's good. 26. You're right. Yeah, I'm going backtrack.
So do you want to go back? Do you want to go back?
No, that's good enough. That's good. All right. That's good. I just want to make sure. I tend to go get a whole backdraft on it. Okay. Thanks. All right. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. Now, Hiram was friends, with David, Solomon's father. And usually, sometimes, if your father's good with an individual, you normally be good. But David was more of a warrior, and Solomon had to create his own relationship with this individual. So then that's what they talk about. They made a covenant between the two. Now, when he made a covenant between them for a great undertaking, and saying, and King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men, and he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by course. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home, and Adoniram was over the levy. Now, before we get to the 29th verse, the levy, the word mas, the first time we see that word mas used is during the Egyptian oppression. Here it is that we had everyone willing to give to the Mishkan. So much so, as we read later on, that Moses had to restrain them. Said, that's enough. Step back. How many people you know? And any fundraiser will say, okay, we got more than enough. We don't need to get no more. But here it is for this Mishkan. They gave so willingly and so much that Moses had to restrain the people from giving. So it was free will, free labor. And yet you read here that Solomon had to raise, or it's like a draft. This is really what it is. A mouse is like a draft. Now we get an idea of that from the book of Samuel, when we ask for a king and it's told what the king will do to you. He's going to take your sons and your daughters and this and that and the other and tax you, blah, say. All that's in the book of Samuel. When we asked for a king, before we got the first king, which was King Saul. So now, when you're talking about raise, no matter how much good the enterprise is that you taking a person from home and say, okay, I'm gonna get 10,000. You're gonna be away from home for a month, and I'm only gonna use 30,000 of y'all. And y'all saying y'all within that 30,000, y'all gonna take turns. 2 months home, 1 month away. Now, that was one difference, major difference. We got the directions and the plans directly from the Creator how the Mishkan should be built up. We got some stuff from David as he set it up, according to as God would give him to give to his son Solomon to set up. But we don't read no plans concerning the actual building of the Beit Hamikdash, the temple. And, we'll get back to that in a minute. So we could pick it up from the 29th verse.
Verse
20.
29.
Yeah, 29.
Verse 29 reads, and Solomon had 70,000 that bore burdens,
Mm-hmm.
and 80,000 that were hewers in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And besides Solomon's chief officers that were over the work, 3,300 who bore rule over the people that wrought in the work.
Hold it right there. Mm-hmm. Now, that sounds like a major enterprise. And, and the thing is too, where they had to go get the timber, those that went to get the timber, they had to go to another location up in Lebanon, to another country. And imagine this kind of work game that you have. It looks really, really like some of the ancient things we think about when we think about the Egyptians. And so, whereas the Mishkan itself, we're gonna get to the time period when it talks about them, how long we had the Mishkan and stuff like that. But I want to bring out that all these workers, where you get them from? Was it volunteer work? How's you paying them? They want to do that. And then it says, and you have guys that bear rule, officers over them. And used to, and used to work SAR too, which is more like a commander.
Right.
They ain't like everything's cool. You have princes in there, Nassim, Nassim, which is in Exodus, in the first 5 books, you got the princes and stuff like that that's working with the people. But here you got the Sarai that's actually making sure, hey, handle that, take care of that. What you doing over there? A little different, a lot different. Even though it's a laudable undertaking they're trying to make, but the difference in the level that's being done here, it's not even, you don't read where anybody is doing something directly out their heart in this particular area, which brings out another issue. And the 31st verse, what it says.
Verse 31 reads, and the king commanded, and they quarried great stones, costly stones, to lay the foundation of the house with hewn stone. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the Gebalites did fashion them and prepared the timber and the stones to build the house.
All right. Now you're working alongside outsiders too. Gibeonites and Sidonians. And you got some Israelites that's drafted into the mix. So this is a real mixed venture here. Very mixed venture. And the only ones you read about that's taken away from their homes is the levy that come out of Israel. Mm-hmm. You don't read about the levy, about the other people, whether the Gibeonites, they say, look at, we know the Gibeonites was the group of people that wind up fooling Joshua way back then, act like they was from a long distance spot. And Joshua made a peace treaty with him and said, oh man, you fooled me, but I gave you my word. So he made him, he was, he was a wood and water carriers and stuff of that nature. But when we think about the people, the rest of the people that's there, at this particular time, and these guys, if you're the fashioner, it's again that did fashion them. That means right then and there that the skilled guys was better skilled than Israelites in this enterprise. That's something. That the best wasn't in Israel. Only one guy that was good. Then we're going to read about later on was Hiram, who happened to be, a Naphthalite, who's hanging out with in Tyre. He's not hanging in Israel. Solomon had to send for him to come on back. But he's the only Israelite of main importance that we read a little bit about, find out who his mother is, find out what tribe he's out of and everything like that. But the main skilled folks that we read about that's running things and over things seem to be foreigners. So, and Solomon had a lot of allegiance with a lot of foreigners at that time. He was very politically and internationally connected. So I just want to bring out some things, even in a laudable undertaking, is how you take the undertaking. So when we go further into it, and it says in the 6th chapter.
We're in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 6, starting from verse 1. And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, and the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziv, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of Yehovah. And
right there. Stop right there before we get to the second verse. 480 years after the children of Israel come out of the land of Egypt. So you get a time frame how long we was using the tabernacle. For 480 years. The first temple, just for those that, would go pursue even further historically. This temple that Solomon built lasted for 410 years. 410 years. The second one lasted for 420. But the first one lasted for 410. And then we did a 70-year bid in Babylon, give or take, round number 70 in Babylon. So 410 plus 70 is 480. So from the time of the 480 of the tabernacle not being destroyed, not being ramshacked, the temple itself only lasted with all this grandeur and all this false labor and all this, hoopla, accolade, as we say, beautifying and everything of that nature, only lasted for 410 years. And then 70-year hiatus before the next one began to be built. So it must be something to reflect here that this number is given. And the month of Z, spelled Zion Wall. Z, Zion Wall. That's the month, the second month, but the word itself means glory or splendor. That's what the word itself means, glory or splendor or a ray of light. And that's normally the second month after Abib, because Abib is supposed to be like basically spring. So the second month of the month of Abib itself, we know that the sun started in the month, well, today they call it YAH, but the second month. And you find that word mentioned in the book, but it's only after the Babylonian period, YAH. But we find out that particular, the sun tends to get more brighter and brighter and brighter at that time, stronger. We're coming up soon on what they call daylight savings time, because the days tend to be noticeably a lot more longer, a lot more, the sun started to come up a little bit more earlier. So here it is, by the time we get to that second month on the lunar calendar, which is this particular month here, Zion Wall for Z. Most time you'll see it spelled Z with it Z-I-B. It's actually when the sun started to get a little bright and stuff like that, or a ray. It means a ray of light unto this day. It means a ray. That's what it means, a ray, a little glory. All right, so we got a time frame here, and said that's when he began. 4 years after he was already in office, already reigning as king. So it wasn't he didn't just jump into this right away and say, I'm gonna go ahead and handle this project. He had to handle some project ahead of time. All right, so now when we pick it up in the second verse,
verse 2, it reads, "And the house which King Solomon built for Jehovah, the length thereof was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house. And 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. And for the house he made windows broad within and narrow without." And again,
stop right there. All right, and the fifth verse. We get to the fifth verse. All right. Now, there's always a speculation about cubits, but mostly when we deal with the biblical perspective here, we also do an 18-inch cubit. More so, I know we could round it off 20. Some people might do even as long as a 24 cubit, which is basically 2 feet. But for most biblical measurements, they use 18. I don't know whether it's because we're in an English country and speaking country in the English language, and 18 also, where you have a lot of people deal with the numbers, is the number of life. So, and since we deal with feet, you're talking about 1.5 feet every time you're talking a cubit, 1.5 feet, 1.5 feet, which is much easier to calculate than the 20. So you're talking about 1.5 feet, which that's what we deal with for us the measurements in America, pretty much. All right. So they give you an idea, you figure if it says 10 cubits, you add 5, 10 feet plus 5. So you're talking 15 feet. And that'd be simple as that. So, and it says, the fourth verse, it says, and the house, and for the house, he made windows broad within and narrow without. Now, I want to bring out this point here, because normally, if you want a lot of light to come in, you make it narrow without and broad within, so that when the light from the sun hit the window, that it was spread out. The light will actually spread out like a flashlight. A flashlight is usually a wide head at the end and narrow when you put the batteries in, but when it comes to the actual bulb, it's spread out so that the light can spread over a wider area. So if you got windows for light, then the window should be normally narrow without and wide on the inside. So when the sun come up, the light will actually spread out within the place. But it was consciously made where actually the windows were narrow within and the wide without. So that means that it's to teach a moral lesson. To teach this moral lesson means that it's not necessary for outside light to benefit the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash.
Nasik, just because maybe I'm looking at it wrong, or I might be confused. Verse 4 says, and for the house he made windows broad within, right? The inside of it was broad and narrow without. So wouldn't the sunlight be coming in brighter within with the windows broad?
The Hebrew perspective is just the reverse. It's just the reverse in the Hebrew perspective. That's right. I just fact check me for those that's listening online. Right. Fact check me for the way the Hebrew vernacular is used.
Okay, gotcha.
It's actually just the opposite. Thank you for bringing that out.
Okay,
it's just the opposite. So and it's meant to teach that that the Mishkan itself, the Beit HaMikdash, don't need outside light. It gives off light.
Gotcha.
That's what our job is. Our job is not to be a light to ourselves, but be a light to other people. So we're supposed to be out there, being influential. So that's one of the areas that's being focused on. So for those, I know a lot of books we read it that particular way. I
Right,
think
because in the Hebrew, I think in the Hebrew it says Yah as la bayi alone
but that means like a passage. Yeah, that means to be
right.
narrowed out. All right,
Atumim, right?
narrowed
Okay,
out. All right,
got you. I just learned
all
something.
right.
I learned something new.
Well, like I said, anybody could, they go into the Hebrew text and stuff like that and check it out with other, grammarians and stuff like that. They'll see there's just the reverse.
Got
All right. All right. And for that particular purpose as well. Because if you need outside light to come in, then what's the sense of when the menorah itself, we had no windows in the Mishkan. No windows in the Mishkan.
Got you.
And the menorah was set so far away. How did the Kohen get in there? He got to have his fire already lit. So the menorah was not even serving as a purpose to see what's going on. It was just a function for him and give him other messages behind it. So the sixth, where was that?
Verse 5. Continue.
5.
Verse 5 reads.
Yeah. Yes.
And against the wall of the house he built the side structure round about, against the walls of the house round about, both of the temple and of the sanctuary. And he made side chambers round about. And the nethermost story of the side structure was 5 cubits broad, and the middle was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For on the outside he made rebatements in the wall of the house round about, that the beams shall not have hold in the walls of the house.
All right there. Now, in other words, one, when he built this house, as we're going to find out that when he built this house itself, that the stones was cut and hewed at the quarry. That's number one. And that's what we're going to speak about. The stones and everything was cut and hewed at the quarry, and also that no hammering or saw sing. You'll find that. Right. So, but the thing was that it was no course. It was not a budget, as some people say. He didn't talk about, I need to meet this course. He went for the best. So. And what it was is that the same quality of building the tabernacle, when they put it together like a jigsaw, that's the exact same quality King Solomon built this here house, this temple, where everything was done off site and brought on site and put in place like a jigsaw puzzle. Now, when we talk about the chambers itself, he didn't want to damage the original foundations of the walls. So therefore you put planks. And so as you went up, it got wider because the next one, the next plank would rest against the wall of the place without protruding or making another, a cut into the wall. So it would sit directly there. So when you walk up, it's like, it'll fit in just like you put like these tables or something like that, something like a table where it would lay against something and it just fit right in. Some people buy these table sets or bed sets and stuff like that there, and they say, all right, I got to put it together. I got to follow the directions. Now, most of them don't snap on, but some of them, you can just say, okay, I got to make sure this go over here, and then just put the screws in just to make it stay there a little bit more over a period of time. But when you build with something of that weight and that magnitude, they put it there like a jigsaw puzzle that was weighed and measured at the site. That when they brought it there, it was no mortar use. No need to use no cement in between in between the stones. You sat it, and it was in place. Anybody that know if you use cement and stuff like that after a period of time, might get pores in there, insects, all kind of little creatures more up in between there. So when they cut the stone so precise that when they laid it there, it fit there airtight. And so when they did the interior for the rooms, they did it similar, but they cut the timber in, and then when they put the timber in, they put the planks in where it fit against the wall that's already there. That's what they pretty much did. All right, continue.
We're going to verse 7. It
Yes,
reads,
7.
For the house, when it was in building, was built of stone made ready at the quarry, and there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building.
Hold on right there, right? That's why I said fit just like a jigsaw puzzle. That means everything was done before you get to the site.
Before you got there.
We don't have to go tap, tap, tap any place with it. You get it up there and set it up, put it in spot, and they're going to stay there. Slap right up in there. One of the things when we read in the Sidra, Yithro, when it last it goes off about an altar, it said, if you make me an altar, a stone, it should not be of hewn stone, because if you lift up your tool upon it, you're greatly polluted. So it's supposed to be no metal used on that, and making it itself. But yet temple had to be cut. Stone had to be banged. And so since stones had to be chiseled and banged, Solomon, he did it at the quarry and the forest. And when they brought it in, we don't want to hear anything, just put it down where it belongs. And so that means also everything is numbered and itemized, like A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. This block, number 2, go against number A block. So that's pretty much what he did in destruction. All right, so we're gonna pick it up from the 8th verse.
Verse 8 reads, the door of the lowest row of chambers was in the right side of the house, and they went up by winding stairs into the middle row, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house and finished it, and he covered in the house with planks for cedar over beams. And he built the stories of the side structure against all the house, each 5 cubits high. And they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And the word of Yahweh came to Solomon, saying, as for this house which thou art building, if thou wilt walk in my statutes and execute my ordinances and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then will I establish my word with thee, which I spoke unto David thy father. And in that I will dwell therein among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people, Yisrael. Hallelujah.
All right, so basically, now that you know that everything was still a jigsaw puzzle, and Solomon's given three requirements. First of all, it said, walk in and create a statute, execute my ordinances, my judgment, and keep my commandments to walk in them. So he was given requirements to say, okay, you notice that the Creator never, in this here particular portion, says, and I'd like to read it again. As for this house which thou art building, if thou will walk in my statutes and execute my ordinances. So why would he say it like that? You built the house. But he said, is the house finished? It should be finished. It should be done. But beginning a project and say, I got the project done, and what the project is supposed to represent, are you really done? We built the Mishkan, but are we done with it? And then one of the things about this here is Mount Sinai. When we was at Mount Sinai, you figure we should always want to go visit Mount Sinai, but we go visit Mount Moriah, the temple. You figure we should always be considerate about the Mishkan itself. But we study the Mishkan, and we focus on more learning the Mishkan than we supposed to be focusing on learning about the temple that Solomon built or the temple that came back in Ezra's time. And yet we're looking for a third temple. We ain't looking for a Mishkan again, but yet we still are supposed to study about the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And one of the things, the tabernacle was moving with the people, where the temple was stationary. We had to come to it. That's number one thing to look at. And why we think more of the temple than the tabernacle today? I was sharing with my sons. I said, most children might know their father and their mother. All right. So most children might know their father and mother, but it seems like it should be a natural thing. And a few children might know the grandparents on both sides. That means they know their father's mother and their father's father, and they know, their mother's mother and their mother's father. So it's 4 people. But very few know the great grandparents, which is 8. That means you got to know, that means right then and there that you got to know your grandfather's father and his mother, and you got to know his wife and her mother, like that. And then you got to know the other side, grandparents. So you got to know 8 great grandparents. You got to know 8 grandparents, great grandparents. You only got to know 4 grandparents, and you only got to know 2 parents. So when we talk about ancestor lines, look how soon we'd be forgotten. Just in 3 generations. To be a grandparent, you're only 3 generations away. A great grandparent is 4 generations away. Most children do not know the grandparents on both sides. And even few of us know anything about the great grandparents, or even on one side. So if we could be forgotten that easily within 3 generations, and we're talking 3 generations now, then what about the Mishkan, 480 years, 13 chapters dedicated, and we still talking about the temple. And before the Mishkan, we don't talk about Mount Sinai. So we forget about Mount Sinai. That was a one-time event. The Mishkan lasted for 480 years, never was destroyed that we read about. And yet the temple 410 years. And we look for another, and the second one destroyed 420 years, and we look for a third temple. And we not trying to study about neither one of those temples. We're not trying to study that much about the first one. We definitely don't study much about the second one. And we only got a few sketches about what Ezekiel said concerning the third one. But we are supposed to study about the Mishkan because that reflects our character. So as we go forward, hopefully that what I said been helpful for most people, and any mistakes been my own. So.
Shalom. Question: Did you speak about the Takash? Maybe I missed it because I think I got up for it.
Yes, I did. I did. I spoke on it in reference to it, just to reiterate that that they really don't know what creature it was. They both agree. And one of the things I spoke on earlier, just in case to reiterate, is that it had to be something that was readily available there, because I said in the beginning, when he says take from me, that means go out and get it. That means you got it.
It's readily available. Right.
Right.
And it was, well, I don't know. I don't know if seal and all the other stuff. That's seal.
Oh, like I said, if it's an aquatic animal.
Yeah.
Sea creatures we can have an abomination.
Right.
Fowls we can have an abomination. We're not supposed to eat certain fowls. That's all.
Right.
All right. So certain animals. So it depends on the destination. We look at the modern destination of different creatures.
Right.
You know what I mean? As opposed to what scripture the destination of creatures are. And one of the things is that's spoken on is that when we look at the I didn't speak on it extensively. I was trying to save some time. But you had over the roof of the tabernacle, you had 4 layers. You had the tapestry with the embroidery work. And then over the tapestry, you had wool over the tapestry.
Right.
And then after that, you had the ram skin over that. And then and the ram skin didn't go all the way down. And then you had the takash, whatever that was, over the ram skin.
Right.
And and towards the Holy of Holies. So we didn't have a solid roof for the Mishkan. We had solid walls, and we had a solid back, for walls, and we had a solid floor, but we didn't have a solid roof. and the curtains and stuff, the tapestry went extended all the way down, and so did the wool extended all the way down. But the ram skin didn't extend all the way down. Now they did the takash that went over the ram skin. And we know it's two different types of skin because it mentioned ram skin and then it mentioned the word skin again.
Gotcha. Why in this chapter is well in this past sidra, the table of incense is not mentioned in this particular portion. You would, because the way that it started with the Ark of the Covenant, and then as it moved out from the holies of holies, it went into the holies. It spoke about the table of showbread. It spoke about the menorah. It spoke about the curtains and everything else.
Yeah, I'm
the
aware of
utensils.
that.
But why do you think it's not meant? I know that later is going to mention it, but it seems like it skipped a step, don't you? Doesn't it seem that way?
Yes, because the incense itself serves a unique purpose itself,
Okay.
And that's actually the most closest thing to the ark and going to the Holy of Holies. What we learn here in this, before we get into the making of the altar, the golden altar and stuff like that, and we talk about the clothes, the priesthood clothes, which comes up later. What we learn here is that Moses getting this information, but we're about to mess up with the golden calf. And so when we get back into everything else, the incense itself, which represent purity, a pure heart and stuff like that. And that's that's why it's burned not only before, twice a day. The Kohen got to burn that twice a day. Once in the morning and once before he go off of duty. He burns that incense. And also he burns it when he goes into the Holy of Holies once in a year. So, and that's the closest item to that area. So there's a lot of commentaries on why I didn't speak about the altar incense up front, but it's nothing really definitive that I could think of off the top of my head right now, which I will share in the next time when that portion come up. But it definitely was an item that was omitted, and the main thing they say is because we know though Moses had this information, he could not share it at the time it came down.
Gotcha.
So what we're reading is information that Moses had while up there for the first 40 days. But when he come back, the people's partying. So no need me telling you about what you need to do. And if you look at the difference between this particular portion, Terumah, and when we get to Wayakel, Terumah itself, when we talk about that, the people are told, first of all, to go take. Moses later on said, bring it. I'm not going out there to get it. Bring it. Which is the difference. Here, this is what we will make. Later on, it's what they had made. So things that may not be always in chronological order in the scriptures. So what we're reading now is what Moses knew before he decided to go up there and say, okay, plans change. I got to go up there and pray for these people because God about ready to kill everybody.
Right. Another question that came up in question and answer period. I don't know if you saw the question and answer period that we had yesterday.
No,
but this is always something that comes up every so often. I believe like once a year it always resurfaces. It's a question of marriage and what is basically someone Moray Aranya gave a scenario that if a man and a woman are together and basically in terms of there was no ceremony, but they were together, right? And I guess the woman decides to part ways or leave or whatever and go and be with another man, but it was established that this man and this woman were together, or at least in the eyes of the people, although they didn't make an announcement or they didn't say anything, they were together, as a couple. Does is that woman leaving and moving away, does that constitute adultery? And is that adultery? Or is it just that they were shacking up together and there was no tie-in or any relationship with them?
Well,
As
in order to
marriage,
be,
as a marriage, as a being together, a man and a
I
woman.
got you. And if you're gonna be a righteous judge, marriage never took place because it had to be a known thing. That's number one. All right. So, even in as raw as Abraham's time, say you my sister, don't say you my wife. So that means somebody going to ask questions. And that means it had to be publicized that this is their status. All right. Now, how much of a ceremony does, later on, only rabbinically, they'd always tell about 10 people, and they basically from, when the servant went to get a wife for Isaac, and it was 10 people there, at least like that. All right. But for scripturally, we know that 2 or more, establish a matter in some incidents, right? And especially when it comes to a serious matter. So all they're doing basically is, you can't call nothing else. You're just fornicating if you don't make it known that, this is my Isha and I'm her Ish in front of a public setting. If you don't do that, you could been hanging around all the time, even if you say some people come in and what's even what should be spoken on more is that even if some new people come into this way of life for the first time and they say, all right, I'm seeing so-and-so, this is my friend, my girl, they tend to say my lady these days and all that kind of stuff,
right.
And say, are you lady in the sense that she's like a wife to you, or you intended on making her your wife? We need to know that status. And it's no, and you say it's personal. Some people say it's personal. Then if it's personal, then if you say y'all break up, then that was personal, because we don't know the status. It was personal, but you haven't declared it. So far as we could see, it was nothing there, because you said it was personal. But if it's somebody that's worthwhile, that's in your life, whether male or female, you got to, and you going to join, it got to be known, because these days now, especially with the rent being high as it is, 3 Years Company used to be a sitcom way back then, but it's real today. It's very real today.
That's right.
It's real today when people say, all right, I got 3 bedrooms. I can't afford this here $2,500 a month rent. You pay X amount this and you pay X amount of that. So, that's real, and that's real, but you're saying that's a roommate. Now we got to know if this is your roommate or this is your mate. So if a brother or sister can't say and definitely say that's what it is, then they jiving. And then if you made them think it's that way, and you look for him to treat you that way, and look for her to respond that way, then you just living a lie. That's all I can say. You're living a lie. Because if a woman is worth having, you would stand up and say, my name is so and so, so and so. This is my wife. Her name is so and so. You like to address the congregation or something like that. And you got to hear something from her. She can't be up there just smiling. And we don't know if she's a hostage or what. Got to threat her, sword within and tear her out. We don't know. Right. So she got to also acknowledge that this is the case. Right. We just can't say, oh man, that's my woman there because I got it, when she was, I'm the first guy in her life and blase, blase. You just can't do it like that, and expect some kind of respect. And then, and that's also another thing when you're gonna have this revolving rubber chair stuff, which is very bad in that area, because now she would bounce from this guy to another guy, And then she'll find out that maybe grass ain't greener over there, and might well come back to the first guy. And then you might use it in a sense to say, well, we never was really married in the first place, so I could take her back, or we never was really married in the first place. And then use certain technicalities on their behalf instead of looking at the moral fabric. And the thing is that holiness and moral fabric in this sense there, that if the woman's with you and she goes to somebody else, then that's it. That's it. Whether you could claim that you didn't say she was married to you or not. You know, but any woman you're interested in, and any congregation that that's around would say, okay, they'll say, okay, well, so and so is dating, courting. We say courting, but you know, the common term they say is dating. Then it got to be known what it is. And the reason a lot of people don't say anything these days is because of the percentage of failures. And that's why I guess it becomes and that's what I kind of surmise. I could be wrong, but because of the percentage of failures in relationships, guys ain't too quick to say this one is my wife simply because we had these disagreements, and and disagreements are coming every now and then, and you step away. But in a marriage situation, 1 and 1 is never 2. It's only 1 and 1 is 1. And that's the big difference. It's never 2. Only in math is 2. But in a marriage situation, 1 and 1 is 1.
Right. I was talking during the question and answer period, and I was saying that, you see situations where a woman is with a man, although they didn't have a ceremony, and they are together as a couple. They had children, been living together. Everybody knows, and then some of these women try to break away. Say, "Oh, we were never together." I mean, that's ridiculous. You had children together. You lived together. You were you were in the same house. I've heard you call him Ish, and I heard her call you Isha. No, I've heard him call her Isha, and then you come up with these crazy scenarios like you never been married. So that's what I was. I reflected on that. I spoke about that. I spoke about just acknowledging the point that you are husband and wife. If you say that this is my Isha, this is my Ish, you just can't walk away from a relationship like that and thinking that you could just move on because you never had a ceremony or anything of that sort.
Yeah, that's a
declaration. The other part was when a man goes out to war and he brings back a captive woman, you just finished killing off her brothers, her mother, her father, everybody that meant anything to her, and then you taking her back, you bringing her back home, and you making her a wife. And there's, I said there was no ceremony for that. I don't hear about them guys having ceremonies for that. It was just, I guess it was just understood. Maybe like how you said, you had witnesses, you had some judges, you had some people that came and acknowledged it, but when she was brought back from war, everybody understood already what it was going to be. Am I correct with that?
Well, the thing was, first of all, you got to bring it to your house.
Right.
So that means even if you was a wealthy individual and you had 5 houses, you got to bring it to the house where you're going to be staying at. And you leave it to herself, be well her mother and father for 30 days, shave her head and bad nails, make her look unattractive. And then when you read about that, it's always about war. And you read about that in Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy. That's where you read that at as well. And one of the things about, maybe in Deuteronomy, I believe. And but one of the things about that is that when you get a woman like that, it started to talk about what kind of kids you get. So I think in Leviticus, they're talking about war. It might have been Leviticus, around 25th chapter maybe, or 24th chapter. When you get a woman or something like that, then and you might have this could be Deuteronomy. Just fact check me. But if you go to war, yes, I think it's Deuteronomy. If you go out to war, and then you see amongst the captives a beautiful woman at that particular time, but you might have a son that's a stubborn, a glutton, and a drunkard. That comes in somewhere along after that as well. You know, you got to lay hold to him to bring from the judges, because you say, well, why does come directly behind the captive woman, a woman that was captive in war, and everything, because it's subject to sometimes that she's gonna be the first teacher for the child. The child might notice his background, his heritage. It might be more rebellious. It might be upset even with the moms for submitting that easily. So, you know, it's a lot of different issues that had to go before the judges and that, but you just can't go and say, okay, I call it Isha because that just means woman. You know, if you say Ishti, my woman, then who you gonna say? Are you emphasizing that? Because also, like we would say in English, my lady. So that those areas there got to be clear cut, and that's the problem, because very few people want to make commitments these days, and the reason they don't like to make commitments these days is because of so many failures in the commitments. So those questions come up, and I'm sure.
Is there a word for? Is there a word for? What is the word for wife?
Well, yeah. Wife is Isha. That's it.
Isha.
You know.
So.
But you know,
I understand your point. I understand your point.
Yeah, if you say, but husband could be Ishi or either Ba'ali.
Ba'ali,
so one,
right. My master.
You know what I mean? So yeah. So but he's still, you know, in a man of authority over you. Right. You know, have authority over you.
So I just looked it up. It's Deuteronomy 21, starting from verse 10.
Okay, thank you.
14.
Appreciate
and then right after that goes into the law of the firstborn and inheritance. So you were right. You were right the first time. You confused your own self.
Right. But that's right. That's why I got guys like you and people online that fact check me and everything like that. That's why I said any mistake in my own. I'm glad I was able to straighten it out this day with some help.
So another thing is, this didn't come up in the Q&A, but that people are confused about, or that's always a confusing factor for people. To me, I see it clearly, but for some people, you know, men and women, sometimes it's confusing, and I believe because people confuse the situation. What is a concubine?
Okay. A concubine actually is your actual woman, like a wife. Like a wife. The only difference is her status of inheritance with the kids and stuff like that, of that nature. Her status, and then you got to say, okay, if it's your concubine, you know, because the woman could belong to another woman, and she gives it to, like Jacob, Raquel and Leah gave them their handmaidens. So now that belongs to them. Well, Abraham, Father Abraham, the problem is that Abraham, you know, Sarah gave him Hagar, but Abraham ducked the problem and said, "Look, that's yours. Handle that." But normally in any tradition, the concubine itself, in some ancient societies, if a woman gave you a concubine, that's normally in hers in some ancient societies where Abraham was from. But in our way of life, if she gave you a concubine, you know, that's your woman. That's why Jacob called them his wives later. And he had children by them. You know, he had those wives. So a concubine, you got to do, you know, you do the best you can, take care of them and everything, like a wife and everything like that. The only difference is when it comes to inheritance. And I don't know why a person, you got to have a wife first before you even talk about a concubine, though. And that's one factor that most brothers don't think. They say, "Oh, that's my concubine," but you have a concubine, but you don't have a wife. So how did that work?
Good point. Yeah, because that's always a discussion that's out there. What is a concubine? Why does the book mention a concubine, and what is the job of a concubine? So it's always some sort of discussion toward. I won't say an argument. I will say a discussion
Well,
around it.
the thing is, I mostly hear more, say, Israelites today more so than I hear about in the East about a concubine that much, because a guy tend to, in the East, since they have a polygamous relationship, tend to automatically say, "This is just my wife. That's it." Now you get so many wives, and you say, well, like Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. There's only 365 days to a solar year, 354 to a lunar year. So it takes basically more than 3 years. Take more than 3 years to get back to the, if you just spent one a day, and not counting the Shabbats now, and that pushes it even further, before you even see a face. So those are more political status. But brother would never, a real true brother would never just say, "This is my concubine," but today, the way they go in the street, they said, "This is my side piece." That's what they always say. That's my side piece. And then girls talking about, "Well, he's my side piece." So that promotes more immorality in a society, because now when you get to a certain age, you're gonna say, "Well, where is my real family? Can I really say this is my family?" So, and it puts children, if you have any children by them, in a strange, vacuum, because now you gotta make sure all your kids know each other. So it's, so when most sisters get into a relationship and they're into this way of life, and the sad part about it is that most sisters, the majority, don't be strong and stay firm in this way of life, where this didn't work out. I don't want people looking at me this way, so I'm gonna move on, do my own thing. I'll come back whenever, every now and then. Whereas most brothers tend to stay more firm in this way of life. So, and if a brother really gonna be firm, and you gotta say, well, okay, if the sister's down with what I'm about, that's why one of the things is about the sanctuary, and that's why one of the things that created, left off in the Haftarah about Solomon, that you ain't finished because you built the house. You only just starting.
Begun.
And the Mishkan is just basically like that. You build the Mishkan to make space for me, but I don't want to dwell there. I want to dwell with you. So you gotta stay in a certain condition. And that's one of the beauties about this way of life, is that you gotta gravitate to the Creator. And each level of the Mishkan, it talks about 4 levels. It's dealing with 4 levels. I didn't go into it today, which is emanations, creation, formation, and action. All 4 of those areas could be attributed to the Mishkan: emanation, creation, then a formation, and then action. And when you look at each item in there, from the Ark of the Covenant, emanation, then you talk about, the creation, what creates certain things, and because the bread is a creative act, the fire is a creative act, the incense and all that stuff, and then the formation, and then the action itself with the altar outside of the altar, the brazen altar is what we do outside coming in. And one of the points speaking about that is that when you look at the Mishkan, and I didn't bring this out today because I'm trying to save it for another time, is that when we talk about the Creator himself, the Creator, when we talk about nothing, we can think of no thing, because something always here. And since we can't think of no thing, we ourselves can't destroy anything, and we cannot create anything. All we could do is, change the form. atom. They split the atom. They said they split atoms. They said, wow, look how much power come out of that atom. But they haven't destroyed it. And saying, look, we done built this up and created this and created that. All we did was take stuff that was there and reformed it and reshaped it. That's what only the creator can create, and the only creator can destroy, eliminate. We don't have that concept. And that brings a big difference in how we view the creator. And that's just why they said that the ark was in there and didn't take up any space.
So overall, your message to, but being that you're an elder, what would be your message? Because this discuss, and even with me, I don't tend to have the answers for this particular thing that we have. What would be your advice in your, and according to Torah, to young people, or to not even young people, couples who are, interested in one another? How should they go about, if they really serious about this, how should they go about doing this in terms of getting together and doing it in the sight of the people?
Well, I made enough mistakes so I could tell you what not to do. But so anyway, one of the things is that and this is what I'm mostly been focused on coming up, even though a lot of times it didn't work, is that you want a woman that's into the same ideologies and values you have. All right, that you want. So if you're about this way of life, and your values about God and trying to do more Torah, observing more Torah, then you need a woman that don't mind praying on a regular. You need a woman that's not ashamed to pray, not ashamed to talk about the God they worship and everything like that. In churches, a lot of women don't have no problem with that. Sometimes even in the mosque, they don't have no problem with that. But with Israelites, it's very few women that actually speak strong and firm and interested in this way of life and want somebody else, that's interested in this way of life. That's the first value system, because now I need to know if you God fearing. So if you God fearing, what God? And what is the values that your God have that you must adhere to? And once we get that out the way, I like the way you look. You like the way I look. I like the way you talk. You might like the way I talk. But the thing is that beyond that, could I depend on you when I'm too weak to pray, that you could pray for me? Or can you depend on me to be there and pray and stand there and ask God, like Isaac and his wife prayed in opposite corners for a child? And it said the Lord was entreated for Isaac's prayer in Genesis. So that means he prayed opposite her. She's doing whatever she's doing, and he's doing what he's doing, and God entreated for Isaac's prayer. But so it's important that you got to share the exact same value, and you got to have the same fear of God collectively. You can't have no fear of God, and I got all the fear of God, or vice versa. I can't have no fear of God, and you got all the fear of God. So, you both got to have a like fear and respect for the Creator and recognize the value system. And then one last thing I'd like to say that most people don't like to hear, especially in this diaspora, there's always a vote of one in the house, never a vote of two, never. All right, and you can always negotiate, compromise, discuss certain issues. But when the decision got to be made, it got to be made with a vote of one, never two. And if it's never like that, and then the man cast that vote, so just in case, because people say, well, okay, who gonna cast that one vote? The man cast that one vote. Other than that, 50-50 never make a relationship. It's 100-100. And when the decision needs to be made, responsible. The man be responsible. If he messed up, then I used to joke and say, well, if it's a vote of one, suppose you make the wrong decision. I'm gonna admit that I made that wrong decision. I was, being facetious, so to speak. But I mean, I will admit I made the wrong decision. That I'm sincere about. But then being facetious by saying, but I'm gonna blame you for not convincing me better. Because he was at least convinced Adam to do the wrong thing. He was able to convince Adam to do the wrong thing. So I would say that. But but that's what my go-to. But in the actuality, though, if you make the wrong decision as a man, you got to man up and say, I made the wrong decision. I messed up. All right, and that don't hold you back. That helps develop you more, because you recognize that was a flaw and a chink in the armor that you're gonna definitely fix right now. All right. So but it's still got to be a vote of one. Anytime you say, well, we're gonna agree, what happens to the disagreement? What you do then? Nothing. And that's why I said it's a vote of one only.
Right. Okay. Torah Nasik, for your insight and for your wisdom. But I was speaking more in terms of like when a couple is getting together, like how we were discussing the marriage. What type of advice would you give for a woman and a man if they want to do it properly? Being that there is really no requirement for a ceremony for marriage, right? But in Tanakh, but what would you give as an advice to couples? Or I mean, naturally, someone coming out of their parents' house, a woman coming out of her parents' house, you will want a ceremony. You will want a festival occasion. But we do understand that there are situations where there are like women and men who might come into this way of life later, or might be divorced, haven't been with someone for a while. What would be the right advice for them to link up or to hook up with it? Right.
It's the value system. What is your values in life? And if this person got the values to move progressively, I mean, what is his goals? What is her goals? How is she living? And also one good area, I used to say, and I used to tell my sons and them, I said, get a resume. I said, resume. I said, people can tell strangers about them, in reference to a job. And they tell strangers about them in reference to their health. I said, you need some kind of resume, and you got to know your goals and your values. Say, what was your interest in, what was your hobbies? What my hobbies got to do with the job? But they asked things like that. So you got to really find out what is the actual goals of the individual and what they want out of life, because they might not want the same things you want in life, where you can't work together with it. And so if you got today, and I just say this, a lot of women, especially amongst our group, are trained to be independent. And since they was independent, they're not being geared to be more like wife material. Because now I'm used to doing everything myself. And they get confused with what is real independence, what is real freedom. And when we read in the Proverbs, the 31st chapter, this woman is ingenious. She had maids, but she do certain cooking around the house. She do her own cooking, but she had handmaids. She buy a field and tend that. She do a lot of stuff herself. And Proverbs 31 is from a female's point of view, even though Solomon is credited for writing it, but it's a mother talk to her son about the qualities of a woman. And so since it's a mother talking to her son about the qualities of a woman, then she ain't even said that. That's her. She just gave her son insight about the qualities of a woman. So if a woman say, well, I got a goal in life, I got a career that I want to pursue in life, then is your career that you're pursuing in life, do they have any room for anybody else? And that's usually what happens a lot. You got to figure out if you got a career, in life that you want to go, that's going to exclude people around you, especially significant others.
Gotcha. Hallelujah. Torah Abad Nasik. Appreciate your insight and your wisdom once again. It's always something that enlightens us. And remember that a lot of these things, to the people, a lot of these things is our opinions, and like in Nasik's instance, life and experience has taught him a lot of things. So what he's sharing with us, a lot of it, that might be opinionated, is from experience and things that he's seeing and things that he's going through in life. So those things come into play. And just a little insight on how we have conversations sometimes on the phone, and just trying to share some of that experience with some of you so that you get the feel of the wisdom and how it's passed down, and how we supposed to pass down this information one to another, and how we develop thoughts and ideas and even bylaws and things that might protect us as we develop as a nation. So Toda, once again, Nasik.
All right, one more thing I'd like to say before I leave.
Yeah.
All right, one more thing I'd like to share is that even you figure a group such as what they consider the mafia, family means everything. They got a certain code concerning family.
They don't trust,
and that's supposed to be a crime organization, but they have a code concerning family and relationships. And so if they have a code and the ethics, and they might be involved with all kind of other stuff, that when it comes home, family is what matters. And that's all I'm going to leave it with. And that's basically what the nation of Israel is about, family.
Hallelujah. Torah Abba. Shalom, shalom, everyone. May the Most High God bless you all. And may the Most High God bless you, Nasik.
All right, Shalom. All of us, Shalom.
Shalom.